The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Wellness Wednesday on W4CY Radio within the Entertainment Network. My name is Holly Kenley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and host of Kenley's Keys for Recovery. Thank you for tuning in. It's so good to be with you. I often say wellness awaits each of us. We choose the time. By listening in today, you have chosen wellness. You see, I believe that most people want to be healthy in their lives, and yet sometimes we need a little help. And that's what this show is about. We're here to inform you and restore you. What do I mean by that? Well, each week we'll take a topic of recovery, such as grief or addiction or depression, or a social issue or behavior that presents a challenge to our mental health or well-being, such as domestic violence, betrayal, or bullying, or it could be both. And each week we're going to do two things. First, grab hold of keys to understanding what you are experiencing or going through. You see, I believe that when we have an understanding as to what is going on and why, that in and of itself is the first step in recovering. And secondly, we're going to get the keys to unlock your recovery. We're going to examine specific healing steps, strategies, tools to become engaged in our recovery. This is important. I believe that there are no quick fixes. Recovery is not a noun or an adjective. It is a verb. It takes time and it takes hard work. You'll often hear me use the word recovering with an ing because it means that it takes action. Sayings and platitudes are wonderful only if we put them to work. Also, we're going to move one step at a time, one day at a time, sometimes one breath at a time. We're not going to cover 15 topics in 15 minutes or 20 different things to change. Why? Because when we feel overwhelmed with too much information, we won't do any of it. Lastly, what makes this show special is that we're going to work hard at staying with topics and themes of each month. However, if something comes up in the news or you let me know about topics that interest you, we may dive into those. And if it's not my area of expertise, I will tell you and look for resources that can help you. I do want to mention that some topics may not be appropriate for minors, and I will let you know. In fact, today on the show, we'll be discussing breast cancer awareness, and is probably most appropriate for about ages 14 and older. And my very special guest will be an amazing woman and breast cancer survivor, my sister, Terry Peterson. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Grab a cup of coffee or tea, sit back and relax, and enjoy the message that's coming ahead. Let's start today. Let's start now. Let's grab the keys and begin unlocking your recovering. Welcome back. This is Holly Kenley, licensed marriage family therapist and host of Kenley's Keys for Recovery. This month has so many important issues: bullying, domestic violence, and breast cancer awareness. Today we're going to focus our attention on breast cancer. I feel so encouraged by all the support, attention, and resources that are being directed towards early detection, effective treatments, and finding a cure for breast cancer. Indeed, amazing strides have been made. At the same time, both women and men and their families continue to be affected by this insidious disease. Today on the show, we're going to have a special guest. Her name is Terry Peterson. She is an 18-year breast cancer survivor, and she is my sister. I'm so honored that she agreed to be on the show to share her inspiring story. Before I introduce her and bring her in, I would like to share a few keys that will help us put today's message into perspective. Whenever an individual receives a life-threatening or altering diagnosis of any kind, each person responds or reacts in different ways. There are so many variables at play, such as age and overall health issues, family members and their ages, financial resources and means, professional constraints, personalities, just to name a few. And of course, the fear and uncertainty of what lies ahead. All of these factors can and do affect stress levels, as well as one's physical strength and mindset to navigate through the treatment process. Over the years that I was in practice, it wasn't uncommon for clients to experience life-altering or life-threatening diagnosis during our treatment time together, or because of a recent diagnosis, many clients came in for counseling to help assist with the emotional and psychological challenges that often accompany serious illness. From my experiences with clients, I'd like to share a couple of keys that may help us in understanding some of those feelings or emotions that accompany a diagnosis, such as breast cancer. First, I remember clients who experienced tremendous grief. This makes sense. There are feelings of loss, certainly the loss of one's health, the loss of one's physical appearance, and the uncertainty of returning to a healthy state. However, there can be additional losses as well, financial, relational, professional, and the others that I alluded to. So, as with any kind of grieving process, it is understandable that individuals go through the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. It is important to understand that these feelings are normal and to give yourself permission and time to process them. Secondly, another very common reaction or response to a life-threatening or altering diagnosis that I heard from many clients was, "Holly, I feel like my body is betraying me. I've eaten right, I've exercised, I've done everything I was supposed to. Why is this happening to me?" Again, my purpose here in sharing this response is to normalize it. Yes, many individuals do experience a sense of betrayal, and their feelings of confusion, worthlessness, and powerlessness, not only over the diagnosis, but also over the disease, are real and they're deeply painful. And it is critical to give ourselves time to honor those feelings and work through them, just as we would work through our medical and physical treatment program. And now, as I get ready to introduce my sister and bring her on, I do want to share that neither Terry nor I are medical doctors, and we're not prescribing or recommending a specific path or plan of treatment. We're here to share her healing journey, which I believe will inform you and restore you. I would like to introduce to you my older sister, Terry Peterson. I have known her all my life, and I have always admired her strong spirit, her tenacity, and her upbeat, positive attitude about life. When she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she handled it with grace and with courage. And during her ensuing extremely difficult treatment period, I was constantly amazed at her strength, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. In my opinion, she's not only a survivor of breast cancer, but she is indeed a thriver. I am so pleased to welcome to the show Terry Peterson. Thanks, Terry, for being here.
Thank you, Holly. It's a pleasure and a privilege. I am honored. This will be fun.
Terry, oh, yes, it's going to be fun. Can you just, before we get started, can you just give our audience, just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm 63. I've been married 41 years to the same man. We have 2 grown children. We have a daughter, Brooke, who is 35. She works in New York and sings opera. She's married. We have a son, Morgan, who's 33. He's a fireman and a paramedic. He is married and lives in Southern California. I do activities at the local senior center here in Santa Cruz, one of which is the Follies, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Mm-hmm. My first love and my most important activity of my life currently. In 1995, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Our daughter was 17, and our son was 15, and I was 45 at the time.
Okay, thanks, Tara. And I wanted, before we kind of get into a little bit of our family history and some of our risk factors, I want to just share that, of course, there's so many other risk factors that are out there, and we're just kind of sharing what went on in our family. And also, I just wanted to mention before you talk a little bit about our family history, is that you and I were very young when we lost a couple of individuals in our family to breast cancer. And I just kind of want to put that out there because we were in middle school, we were quite young. And so the word cancer is something that we heard about early on, and we were, it was always kind of, I think, on our antenna. It was out there in our radar of vocabulary and with our limited understanding at that time. So with that said, Tara, let's give the audience, some of our family history with cancer and then include in that some of the risk factors.
Right. And, of course, as you said, we were just teenagers. I believe I was 13 and you were 12 when our maternal grandmother passed away with ovarian cancer. She was initially diagnosed at age 62 and only lived a year, and she died at age 63. Many years later, 20 years, oh gosh, I don't have the exact date, our mother's sister, our aunt, was diagnosed at age 57 with breast cancer, and she died at age 62, and that was actually in 1983, so it was 20 years after our grandmother had died, and this was her older daughter, our mother being the younger daughter in that family.
Mm. And Tara, what would some of the other risk factors be for it during, and again, we're talking a period of time ago, but that you were and we were aware of at that period of time?
Well, one of the things that we weren't really aware of at the time, but that came to fruition later, was that we spent our summers in Nevada visiting our grandparents and our cousins. And in the late 50s and early 60s, there were a lot of hydrogen bomb tests done out in the Nevada desert. And it created complications for people. They started seeing different kinds of cancers, and it became known as the downwinders because people around the area were literally downwind from the testing. And people who lived in Nevada, Utah, Arizona were showing up with different types of cancers, breast cancer being one of the common ones. Our uncle, another family member, actually passed away of lung cancer and lived in Nevada and Arizona during those years. We also were there every summer from the time we were born until I think it was 69. So we were there during all of that testing, and that is a possible risk that we had with the downwinders and the testing that they had done in Nevada.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Terry. And it's just a few days ago, I was talking to a friend of mine here who was also sharing in the area of Arizona, where we both now live, just the prevalence of not only breast cancer but other kind of cancers. And they were talking about that factor right there of the downwind from the atomic testing many years ago. So it's just interesting how that comes into conversation as people are sharing about their battles with breast cancer. Terry, you've always been a person, in my opinion, who's taken such good care of yourself, physically and emotionally and just in all different ways. And so kind of given our family history, what preventative steps did you take? And, did you have signs or symptoms? If you could kind of go over that for the listening audience about, what kind of was your plan, how you took care of yourself, keeping in mind that we did have maybe higher risk factors than the average folk.
Yes. Well, as most women do who take care of themselves, one of the preventive measures that I took was to see my doctor, my gynecologist, annually. I made sure that I had my appointment on time every year, had the pap smear exams, particularly from the grandmother who had ovarian cancer. We had to keep an eye on that. And then the mammograms annually. Mm-hmm. When I was 42, I started having quite a bit of night sweats, and then I moved on to the hot flashes and saw my doctor and was prescribed hormone replacement therapy, commonly known as HRT. And that was supposed to help with the night sweats and hot flashes. And when I say night sweats, I'm talking severe night sweats, waking up, soaking wet, having to get up and put on a clean nightgown. So they were pretty extraordinary at that time, and that was quite young. And then in 94, 2 years into my hormone replacement therapy, we were visiting you in Southern California up in the mountains at Thanksgiving. And I remember that specifically because it snowed that year, and I spent an enormous amount of time outside cooling off in the snow because I was so hot during the day. And I don't mean to make light of it, but it's pretty funny. And so when we got back after that Thanksgiving, I saw my doctor. I usually saw the doctor, I think, in December. I went in and had my annual appointment, and the nurse practitioner actually found a lump in the right breast. Mm-hmm. And so she ordered a mammogram. And then because I was still so distressed with the night sweats and the hot flashes, she actually increased the dosage of the hormone replacement therapy and showed me how to look, found the lump, showed me what it felt like. I could touch it myself and see it felt like a little hard P, which was typical of a breast cancer sign. And then she said to keep an eye on it, and if it changes, we need to check it additionally. The mammogram came back negative. And
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, which is not uncommon, I found out later. So by August, 8 months later, I had been checking the lump every month like I was supposed to, and there was a definite change. So I made an appointment with a different doctor. I made an appointment with a breast doctor because I was concerned, and he recommended that we do a simple biopsy with just to go in and take out just the lump and move on from there. Okay. And that result was cancerous.
Okay, so if I'm remembering right, so you were, now are you 43 or 42 at this time?
I'm 44 going on 45. It was December of 94. Yeah, so it was 2 years of the hormones.
Okay, so, all right, just going to a breast doctor, he does the biopsy, and can you take us now from that point forward, tell us about if you're feeling comfortable about the surgeries and kind of explain what happened from that point forward.
Sure. Surgery doesn't really bother me too much. So the little biopsy was a little outpatient, was not a big deal. The lump came back cancerous, so I was immediately referred to an oncologist and then a second surgeon who was a specialist in breast cancer. And so we opted to have a lumpectomy, which means you go in and you take out additional breast tissue. It's not a mastectomy. You take out additional breast tissue and then also take out a sample of the lymph nodes under the right armpit. And they test those, and they had signs of additional cancer in the breast tissue. And out of 14 lymph nodes, 7 of them were cancerous, which was not a good sign. That put it into the stage 3 cancer at that time.
Okay.
So.
All right. So, go ahead.
Oh, I would just say the oncologist planned an aggressive year of treatment. Do you want me to go into that now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So he, cute, darling little doctor, very, very aggressive, hated cancer. So he started out with 4 heavy chemo treatments every 3 weeks. And then I would do 5.5 weeks of radiation. And then I would do 6 more treatments of chemo after that. So it would take about a year, from October of 95 to September of 96. He also recommended that I have a Metaport put in, which is, you can visualize a little plastic vial that kind of looks like a pool sweep. If you've seen a pool sweep, it has a little tail on it. And what they do is they take that and they implanted that under the left clavicle, and then that tail actually gets surgically implanted into the aorta, which goes directly into the heart. So that meant that I would have my injections into that little vial and not have to be in the infusion room for 6 hours doing a chemo IV. So that was not bad. The odd thing was that when you get the chemo injection, it goes into the vial, of course, it goes into the heart, and it just pumps instantaneously throughout your body. You just have this immediate buzz. And the good news was I wasn't there all day. I was only there for like 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay. Terry, how did you feel? Can you talk a little bit about, how you felt, not only with the chemo, but with the radiation? I know we talked in preparing for today a little bit about how, your count levels, you've got to be very careful of those. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, one of the first things that happened, of course, was I lost all my hair. So I decided that since I had never had long hair, that I would try a long, curly, reddish hair wig and a short, dark brown page-boy wig because, might as well take advantage of the opportunity. So I had the chemo October through 95 through January of 96. And then I started the radiation, and that was pretty much more debilitating than the chemo. With the chemo, you were sick the first couple of days, then you got over it, and then your counts would go down to 0 white counts. So I made sure that I wasn't around anybody that was sick. I kept our home very, very cool. Everybody dressed in thermals and layers. And I didn't have any germs in the house. I didn't ever really get sick. And then about the time you start feeling better and you're feeling like you can get through this, it was time for the second injection. So that was over about a 3-week period. But just taking the precautions of not being around the public and keeping the house cool, I really feel that helped me stay well because there weren't any germs growing anywhere. And then
Terry,
when I did the radiation, go ahead.
No, I remember even as sick as you were, the few times I saw you during that year, is that you did try also to do some mild exercising, just walking. I'll mention that you lived up in the mountains, and so it wasn't an easy walk. But I just remember how much not that you pushed yourself, but that you really tried to get that bit of exercise when you could and when it was, of course, safe for you.
Yes. It was, just to be outdoors, even in the cold, if it wasn't raining, just the fresh air and just being able to walk, not a quick pace because it was uphill. But my mailbox was at the top of the road, and I needed to get my mail, so that was a good excuse to go out and a goal to go out every day and do that. On the weekends, my husband would go with me. We'd take light walks, and it was just very refreshing.
Okay. And I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but after that year of chemo and radiation, then you were put on tamoxifen. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the interesting things before we go to that part is that one of the doctors, the breast specialist, fabulous man, had said something that stuck with me. He said, if your attitude will be 50% of getting well. Mm-hmm. And I just appreciated that so much. He was so encouraging. And then I also got a book about breasts and breast cancer, and it was Dr. Susan Love's breast book. I wanted to know every gory detail about what I was dealing with and what my options would be and how I best could beat it. And that really helped me.
Mm. Yes, as I mentioned in the introduction, Tara, is that you're a pretty upbeat person just by nature in your personality, and also very proactive in your approach to whatever it is in life that you're dealing with. So, and yet keeping that in mind, which is just such a positive contributor to wellness. Would you mind sharing just a bit about any fears, anxieties, concerns that you had, for your children, for your husband, or any other feelings, even as being as upbeat as you are by nature, as I said, what were some of those feelings and anxieties possibly that you were experiencing?
Well, the first thing I did, of course, as we just mentioned, was to get this book and find out what I was dealing with. And for me, to find out what the worst-case scenario is, then I could plan my attack. So that really, really helped. My biggest concern was for my family. I knew that it was going to be harder on them than it would be on me. Mm. And I think that plays true for a lot of people, is that once I'm gone, I know where I'm going to be. I wasn't afraid to die. I knew where I'd end up. But they would be experiencing the loss. And so that was one of my first concerns. My husband, first thing he did was take us out on a family outing. He wanted to go to Europe, and since he had business in Munich, we took the kids out of school and went to Germany for a week and had a memory maker. We had a great time. The kids and I went off on our own while he was in meetings, and then we would have dinner together. So that was a real positive thing for him, and I think that was healing for him, that we were able to make a memory as a family. My goal for the year was to keep everything as normal as possible, stay on a steady course. The kids were still in school. Our daughter was a senior. Our son was a sophomore. So there were lots of activities there. We kept our holidays the same. We came down to visit you and your family at Thanksgiving. And then we did our regular Christmas and Easter things with our church. We were always involved with the church group during the Christmas and Easter. And so I tried to keep things on an even keel and not make too many drastic changes.
And and given the ages of Brooke and Morgan, as you said, 17 and 15, and Terry mentioned earlier in our interview of our conversation about her wearing wigs, and just there are just some hysterical stories about her son as we were out shopping and during the holidays, and him as we were looking at different wigs, and Morgan quickly pulled a hat off of a mannequin that had a wig on it and put it on. And I think, you had such a wonderful sense of humor about it, and you kind of in your own way normalized it for them. And so I don't remember ever sensing a lot of, there may have inside, of course, been worry and anxiety, but you really brought them in and shared with them age appropriately, and not only normalized it, but like I just said, in a lot of cases had fun with it. So,
and I had forgotten about that story. It was so funny. We had our daughter Brooke and son, and your daughter Alexis, and the three of them were standing together, and the girls look a lot alike anyway, with Morgan in that wig. Oh my gosh, we were just hysterical. One of the other funny things that I found was that I would have these hot flashes, and I would literally just have to take my wig off and just cool my head. And if we were with friends, they didn't mind so much. But I remember, too, we were in Colorado for a trip, and we were on this bus, and I was having a major meltdown, and I just told Lee, I said, I've got to get this hair off. And so I just hung it up on the bus said rest. And people, they thought it was weird, but you just have to do what you have to do.
Yeah.
I was going to just add the only real other change that I made in my life was that I had to teach myself how to sleep. I had to learn to love my bed because rest was really, really important. And so I gave myself permission to rest and sleep for a year. And so that's what I did. I didn't get up real early like I normally do, and I took frequent naps. And I think that was real important in the healing was, to put chores aside, to take a rest, even when you weren't feeling 100% tired, but to go ahead and do that little cat nap along the way, and I think that really helped.
Absolutely, Tara. And we're going to get ready to take a short second break. And when we return, we're going to talk to Terry about how she got through this period in her life, what her personal keys were and are in her healing journey from breast cancer. You're listening to Kenley's Keys to Recovery. We'll be right back. Back. This is Holly Kenley, licensed marriage family therapist and host of Kenley's Keys for Recovery. Today we are discussing breast cancer awareness. I have my sister Terry Peterson on the show with me. She's an 18-year survivor of breast cancer, and actually, as I said, I refer to her as a thriver, and you will see why in just a moment. If you missed the first part of the show, please go back and take a listen, and I will post it on my blog after we get done today so that you can have a better understanding of Terry's journey. And again, I do want to mention that today's show is probably best suited for about age 14 and older. As I mentioned in the introduction of my sister, I was and am still today amazed by her uncompromising and unwavering strength of body, mind, and spirit, in which she navigated her journey with and through breast cancer. Tara, let's talk for a few minutes about the healing principles, concept, attitudes, or as I like to call them, keys, whatever you would like to call them, that you feel were critical in your recovering journey. Before the break, we were just talking a little bit about attitude and being proactive. And so kind of keeping that in mind, it seems like, you had really quality medical treatment. Can you comment on that and say how and why that was important, if it was?
Absolutely. I chose an oncologist who was extremely aggressive. He'd had a real thing about cancer and just literally attacked it. So I was really happy with him. One of the things that we did was the chemo and the radiation. And the chemo, it was stage 3 because of the 7 lymph nodes involved. My chances of survival were initially 50-50. And so we opted for the 1 year of aggressive treatment and then the 5 years of the tamoxifen pill. He also took me right up to death's doorstep with the chemo. The first set of chemo that I had, I will never, ever be able to have that particular cocktail again. Now, 18 years ago, there are new things, but that was one of the risks, was it causes congenital heart failure. And so I was willing to go through that. So we did that. We did the medical treatment. had the attitude of getting well, the rest, and pretty much just went down that plan.
Mm-hmm. Terry, I really appreciate how you said that, you wanted to know, and that was an important piece of your healing. And, I'm very much a subscriber to that knowledge is power. And of course, with the internet and everything, there's so many wonderful sites and ways to find out information. At the same time, somebody else that might be, it might not be their path, but I know, certainly I think we could safely say in your case is that it was a life-saving step that you took, being as proactive and having a doctor who was as proactive and as you said, just so committed in his treatment plan for you.
Yes.
Tara, let's go on to another really important piece of your recovery and something that, I've always just so admired about you, no matter what challenge you have been faced with. It's kind of a quote of yours that I've never forgotten and I've often used is that, and when you got this diagnosis, I remember you saying, I don't ask why, I just say, where do I go from here? So I don't know if that's kind of based in your faith, but talk to us about that, if you will, and how your faith has been and still is a very important key in your wellness.
Of course. Well, I had a very strong support group from my church. We had a large praying body that prayed regularly for me. I had a prayer partner from years before, and she actually organized all of our meals for the times when I was so sick that I was not able to cook. So the family always had a meal during the chemo and then during the radiation, because it was 5 days a week for 5.5 weeks, and my husband did a lot of traveling. She set up a calendar so that I would have a ride to the radiation every single day. The people came from Santa Cruz up to the mountains, picked me up, took me to my treatments, and brought me back. So that was absolutely fabulous to have that group. I also pampered myself, and with the radiation, some of the risks are the skin burning and not just redness, but blistering and peeling. So I took bubble baths and oil baths and just, again, part of that rest and healing process. I wanted to make sure that I was doing as much as I could to get well. And it was all positive. It was all enjoyable. Is that kind of what you were looking for?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Absolutely. And I remember just the consistency and incredible support from your church and from your prayer partners. And I just wanted to, just bring that in. I know that you had belonged and perhaps still do to a prayer group. And I remember you just saying how important that was for you as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it just, not just the prayer, but the communication with the people weren't afraid to come and see me. A lot of people are afraid to go see cancer patients because they don't know what to say or what to do or how they're going to look. And I just appreciated that these women were willing to drive the distance and spend the time with me. And that, I think, was very important in the healing process as well, is not to be ostracized. People forget that the cancer patients, even when your counts are down, you don't want to be with people, but there are times that they need to have that comfort.
Terry, that is just such an important point. I hadn't even thought about that. Thank you for bringing that up. Of course, along with your family at church is your own family, and you have talked about that a little bit. I know that they were an incredible support to you as you were for them, as we already talked about, but anything else that you would like to add as far as of your family and how that played a part in your healing as well?
Well, I just think spending time together, we did as much as we could together for the year, and by not changing our routine, we always joke about having a plan, working the plan, and reworking the plan, and that's pretty much what we did for that year, we had a plan, and then we would work it out, and you make changes as you go along. But I think just initially having the goals, the first goal was to get through the first year, and the second goal was to get through 5 years. And when you set those goals and you make your plan and work within them, and of course change them as needed as you go along, I think that was really helpful for the family, that we didn't turn our lives upside down. It wasn't chaos. Everything pretty much stayed the same, and I think that was helpful for the kids.
Really good point. Let's go on to, I know that exercise, I remember as I mentioned earlier, alluded to that you continued to walk. You mentioned giving yourself permission to sleep, which I want the audience to know is that, you're like the Energizer Bunny, that she doesn't usually give herself permission to sleep. So that was a huge thing for her. I remember you've always eaten well and you kept a pulse on that. But let's talk about the tamoxifen and being on that for 5 years and how you felt, and then how that led you into joining the Follies, because this is such an important piece was and is of your life.
It is. It is my life currently. So after the first year of treatment, we went on the 5-year tamoxifen plan, and it meant that I took the drug in the morning and in the evening, twice a day. And for me, it was probably pretty much the worst part of the treatment. I was just violently nauseous every morning when I took the pill, and every evening. So I made a plan. I would get up at 5 and take the pill, and then I would go back to bed for an hour or an hour and a half and get up, and then I would, start my day, my housekeeping, grocery shopping, go to my Bible study class or my prayer group, do laundry. And then I would make a point at 4 in the afternoon to take the second dose and then lie down for another hour or an hour and a half until I could fix dinner. And I think for me that worked the best, just giving my body permission to get that drug in and moving. And a lot of people don't have the nausea with the tamoxifen, but for me that was probably the worst part. So after about 2.5 years, I decided that I was pretty much sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I joined a tap class, a beginning tap for adults, and found my true love, other than my husband and children, in activities. I just fell in love with dancing. And so much so that I took a beginning ballet class, I took a beginning jazz class, I added an intermediate dancing class, and at one point I was taking about 5 different dance classes a week and was just thoroughly enjoying every bit of it. The only drawback was it is very addictive, and once you start, it's really hard to stop. So after about 2 years of dancing, and mainly in tap, that was my favorite, I joined the Santa Cruz Follies, which is a performing group. Every September they put a show on at the Civic Auditorium in Santa Cruz, and it raises money for the Senior Center. And I just fell in love with these people. 2 of the women, I found out after a couple of months, were breast cancer survivors. One gal is just now turning 94 this December.
Wow.
The other gal we lost last year, her breast cancer had come back 3 different times. But just lovely, lovely women and tappers. We were tappers. And in one of my classes, I met another gal who had been diagnosed with breast cancer very young. She's still a survivor, and she's a good tap partner. And so it's just interesting how no matter where you are, what you're doing, the little ugly breast cancer pops its head up and is there. So today, I still dance. This last September was my 13th Follies. I forgot to mention, you have to be 50 to be in the Follies. So my first performance was at 51 in 2001. And this last September, I did my 13th show, and it's just a blast. It's my favorite thing in the world to do.
And I just want to tell the listening audience, if if you have in your mind, if you've ever seen, I don't know, the Palm Springs Follies or others, that this is just kind of an easygoing, elderly people thing, that's so wrong. I have seen their performances multiple times, and Terry, your ensemble can put any young kid to shame. So this is a pretty amazing deal. Tara, as we're kind of getting ready to pull this all together, as I think in particularly about your faith, your family, and the Follies, is that these are all areas where you're putting your focus outward. And granted, when we're given a serious diagnosis, it is important to put our focus inward and focus on our journey and our wellness and our treatment and all of that. But I just want to share with the audience that sometimes that can actually fuel and feed the depression that sometimes accompanies serious illness. So, and again, we want to keep our wellness the priority and our treatment, but it's just so beautiful how you have found these three ways, faith, family, and Follies, to put that focus outward. And it really does help in putting, wherever you decide to do that, to draw your attention away from the difficult state of being that someone is in at the time. So, I just wanted to mention that because, and I mean, that's kind of your personality, but I certainly, in my opinion, think that enhanced and really, really had a lot to do with your recovering. Would you say
Absolutely.
that? Okay.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And one of my favorite sayings is when people ask me, well, how do you find time to dance? I say, well, I turned my dusting rags in for dancing shoes. So that for me that's kind of my mantra, to choose to live life to the fullest. And for me, that's being able to do dancing.
And Tara, absolutely. I'll share with the audience that we were always a little OCD growing up with our dusting. So it wasn't, yes. it was, it was a big thing to trade in your dusting rags for dancing shoes.
Absolutely.
In closing today, Tara, I want to thank you so much for being with me, for sharing your personal story with us. Your words they're so inspiring and healing and restorative, and I know that if anyone listened to this, it's going to give them hope, and hope is such a huge part of healing. And as I often say to people, for me, even though you're shorter than I am, I've always looked up to you. And yes. I always will. And before I close off, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Oh, it was just an honor and a privilege to be on your show, and I love you, and it's just you're the best. I couldn't ask for a nicer, better sister. Thank you so much, Holly.
Thank you, Terry. And I'd like to close today by just saying that each person's journey through a life-changing or life-altering diagnosis is unique. And although we should not make judgments or draw comparisons, it is encouraging to learn from the lessons of others. When I think of my sister, Terry Peterson, of her commitment to faith, family, and the Follies, I am in awe of her. And when I think of Terry's legacy, these words from the song, "I Hope You Dance," seem to say it all. I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. Whenever one door closes, I hope one more opens. Promise me you'll give faith a fighting chance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, dance. I hope you dance. I hope you dance. Wellness awaits each of us. We choose the time. Now is your time. Grab the keys and unlock your recovery, or start dancing. Until next time, believe and be well.